that don't have to do with data. It has to do with sharing what we call tacit knowledge, the knowledge that's in all of our heads, but we all have a very hard time expressing it. It's actually, I believe, the most valuable knowledge to flow. And the other interpretation I get is, well, flow, that means sharing knowledge, moving knowledge from point A to point B, letting people who don't have access to the knowledge get access to it. Again, that's an important and valuable piece. I would say that an even more valuable part of knowledge flows is actually creating interactions where new knowledge is created. Not where you're just sharing existing knowledge among a broader range of people, but where people are coming together and actually creating new knowledge. And in that context, I think one important theme to put on the table is knowledge like that, creating new knowledge, particularly when you're talking about very diverse people coming together around challenging performance targets, typically doesn't flow smoothly. And when we talk about things like conversations, it has this image of this kind of soft interchange and, discussion with each other, as opposed to really fierce arguments, really fierce clashes of very divergent points of view. What we call productive friction is essential to create new knowledge, particularly if you're talking about diverse people coming together. That's a very different model. What are the conditions to create productive friction?
Constructive
I will say that that we've looked at a lot of different environments where productive friction occurs, everything from extreme sports to World of Warcraft. And I have just a brief anecdote of a friend of mine related to this notion of productive friction. I first met him 10 years ago in a startup in Silicon Valley. At the time, he was just out of college. He basically was the computer help desk person you went to. If your PC was having a problem, you would go to this person and he'd help you solve the problem. 10 years later, today, he was named the CIO of Starbucks, the youngest CIO of a Fortune 500 company in the United States. And if you ask him what he attributes his success to, this rapid rise over a 10-year period, he focuses on one thing. He says, well, I'm a guild leader in World of Warcraft. And I acquired a set of skills as a guild leader that have proven extraordinarily valuable in driving my advancement. And he talks about things like the notion of leadership in a world where you don't have command and control, you can't direct people, you have to influence people. But more importantly, what he focuses on is, he says, World of Warcraft is about conflict. And it's about shaping conflict in productive ways, so you accomplish shared goals. And that's hugely valuable. And he said that's the key to knowledge flows in his organizations and why he's been able to harness that. So that's an interesting example of the kind of knowledge flow I'm talking about. It's not conversation. You have conversations in World of Warcraft, but for those of you who know the environment, that's not what it's really about. So final question is, so how is change going to happen? And I want to focus just quickly on 2 points of view here. One is there's a creative destruction view, which says that all large enterprises today are basically dinosaurs. It's just a matter of time before they destroy, self-destruct, and you'll see a whole new wave of companies, and maybe not companies, but elance people emerge and replace them. That's a very real possibility. I'm a huge believer in Schumpeter and his views. I would say that one of the things that I would point to in that context, if you're looking for creative destruction, I wouldn't look at it for here in the United States. I would look for creative destruction coming out of emerging economies, particularly China and India. I will stake as a provocative proposition, which we can discuss over lunch, that the social businesses that are most scalable in the world today are emerging in China and India, not here in the United States.
Wow.
And they're actually doing it largely without the benefit of the internet, by the way. So I think that's an interesting proposition to look at. If you're going to find the next wave of attackers, I would look out at those two areas. But I do think there is hope for creative construction, which is the notion of larger enterprises figuring this out and being able to move. I'll just say very quickly here that from my experience at least, and I've led a lot of change efforts in large companies, this is not about programs. And I think too often when we talk about social media and social business, we put together programs. Particularly now, executives are in the mindset of, I got to have one of those. It used to be virtual communities. I got to have a customer community. Now I got to have a social network. Now I got to have a real-time streaming facility within my company. I think most of those actually are going to fail. I think it's ultimately about how do you find people with passion, and I loved Lee's earlier reference to that, people with passion in an organization and connecting them with very explicit pain points in the organization. And wherever possible, doing it on the edge of the organization, not in the core. I will tell you from my experience, if you try to change the core of an organization at the outset, you will fail. The core is very, very strong. The resistance points are intense. So go to the edge, demonstrate impact against key pain points with people of passion. More people of passion will join, and you'll start to build some momentum. Interesting. So with that, let me turn up.
Excellent talk.